Let's talk transformations today. Today we're going to take the graph, the cubic function f of x equals to x cubed, and we're going to do some transformation to it. A couple of things to remember from the past units. When you're doing transformation, every number that happens on the inside of a grouping is going to be a horizontal movement, and it's not going to follow the sign. It's going to be opposite of the sign. Okay, when it's outside of a grouping, or when it's outside a whole parentheses, when it's outside of an equation, when it applies to the entire equation, it is going to be a vertical movement, and it's going to follow the sign, meaning it's going to go with the sign. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of examples. So for example, if I have f of x minus h, notice that minus h is a number that's happening inside my parentheses, inside my x, only applying to just the x. For example, right here, x minus 5, the quantity to the third power. That means, zoom it in a little bit, okay? When you have this, that 5 is on the inside of the parentheses, it's only applying to the x. That means that this is a right, the translation to the right 5 units. Because I am not following the sign. Normally, minus would be a left. But since I'm not following the sign, I am moving the opposite of left, which is right. So here, if I say x plus 5, the quantity cube, that is moving left 5 units. Now, if you're adding a number or subtracting a number outside of the parentheses, or in this case, applying it to the whole equation, that's x cubed plus 1. The plus 1 is applied to the entire x cubed. That is moving up 1 unit. It is outside, it is a vertical movement, so up or down movement, and it follows the sign. So when it says plus, it means to go up. And when it says minus, it means to go down. So in the second one, it will be down 4 units. All right, reflection is a little tricky. Reflection is a little tricky. This negative, when you're multiplying by a negative, that's the same thing as a reflection. And this negative is multiplied only to the x. It's on the inside of the parentheses, just like this one, g of x equals to quantity negative x to the third power. That is a horizontal movement. So when you're taking something and reflecting it horizontally, you're actually reflecting it over the y-axis. So when you have a negative on the inside, it is a reflection over the y, reflection over the y-axis. On the second example for the reflection, that negative is applied to the entire equation x cubed. So I am going to reflect in a vertical movement. So if I'm doing this, I'm reflecting over the x-axis. Now when we talk about stretches and shrink, remember that inside, when it's only applied to just the x, it is a horizontal movement. So in this case, since you're multiplying by a number, it is horizontal. It is a horizontal stretch or shrink. So I'm going to write horizontal. I don't know if it's a stretch or shrink yet, but I know that it's going to be opposite of this. So if it's 2 times x, that means that it's really divided by 2, so by 1/2. And because 1/2 is a number smaller than 1, this is a horizontal shrink by 1/2. If you're looking at multiplying the x on the inside just to the x by 1/2, horizontal, I don't know what it is yet. Let's take a look at the number. Remember, the number has to be opposite. This is 1 divided by 2. So instead of 1/2, I'm actually going to have to multiply it by 2. It is a horizontal stretch by 2 because 2 is bigger than 1. A number bigger than 1 is going to give me a stretch. A number smaller than 1 and bigger than 0 is going to give me a shrink. So the horizontal stretch or shrink, it's a little tricky because you have to do the reciprocal of whatever is actually multiplying by. Okay, so last but not least, if I take a number and I multiply it to the entire equation. So for example, I took 8 and multiply it to the entire x cubed. That it's a vertical. And because it's vertical, it's going to be stretching and shrinking by exactly that number. The number is going to stay the same. So the first one will be vertical something by 8. And since 8 is bigger than 1, this is a vertical stretch by 8. The second one, 1/4 times x to the third power. That is also a vertical because it's multiplying on the outside of the entire equation or multiplying the 1/4 to the entire equation x cubed. So it is a vertical, either stretch or shrink. Because it's outside, it follows the rule, so it doesn't change. So it's by 1/4. And since 1/4 is a number in between 0 and 1, that is a shrink. So these are some simple examples of some transformation that you might see.